before the story begins, hit that like button and subscribe. Here, the horror is real. Let's go!
Sometimes I wonder if the job has changed me. Not in the obvious way. I don't smoke, I don't sneak booze into my locker like some colleagues. But deep down, something shifted. It's not the screams, not the gunshots or the car crashes. It's the quiet things, the things that repeat, the ones no one can explain. But that were real, so real, they still wake me up at night, even though my house is silent. It was a Monday evening in February 2019. I was working the late shift at the Hamburg Mitte emergency call center. It was calm. A few minor accidents, 2 noise complaints. Nothing unusual. I was alone at station 12, headset slightly too tight, coffee already cold. I was absent-mindedly scrolling through my notes when the first call came in. Police emergency. What's your emergency? Silence. Then, breathing. Hesitant, faint, feminine maybe. But the voice was flat, emotionless. Then the sentence, "I think he's inside." I repeated the question, asked for a name, an address. No answer, just a soft click. Disconnected. I logged the incident, possible threat, unclear situation, and tried to trace the number. The screen showed an old listing. Address, Schwanenstieg 14, an abandoned building in Winterhude. The name rang a bell. I thought it had to be a system error, so I double-checked. Same number, same address, no registered residence. The last owner had died in 2008. No electricity contracts, no water usage, no activity since. 10 minutes later, second call. Same voice, same breath, same words. "I think he's inside." This time I spoke more calmly, tried to keep her on the line. "Who's inside? Are you in danger?" But again, click. Disconnected. I reported it to my supervisor. He gave me that look I knew all too well. Half annoyed, half exhausted. Probably a prank. Some teenager messing around. Forget it for now. But I didn't forget it. The third call came in at 9:41 p.m. I remember because I had just opened my notebook to update the previous report. Same number, same voice, same whisper. "I think he's inside." This time the line didn't cut off immediately. A few seconds passed. I held my breath. Then, a sound in the background, hard to describe. Not a scream, not a voice, just a thud, like something heavy had fallen. Or someone. I immediately dispatched a patrol car, gave the address. And before I could finish logging it, a fourth call, and I swear to you, it was the same voice. Again, "I think he's inside." I don't know why it shook me so badly. Maybe it was the way she said it. No panic, no pleading, just quiet resignation. Like she knew it was already too late. By the fifth call, my heart was racing before I even picked up. I didn't speak, I just listened. This time the words came slower. "I think he is inside." And then, a breath. But not hers. Something else. Closer to the mic. Heavy. Wet. The patrol arrived soon after. I stayed on the radio, listening as the officers stepped through the gate, which, according to them, crumbled like paper. The front door was locked but not bolted. Inside, empty. No lights, no sound, nothing. Just an old landline phone in the hallway, plugged in. Even though there was no power, no active line, and still. Every one of those 5 calls had been traced. To that exact phone. I don't know how long I sat there afterward. An hour, maybe more. Just staring at the screen. At the blinking log. And then, at 11:12 p.m., a 6th call. The system showed the phone was no longer connected. I hesitated. Maybe for the first time in my career. "Police emergency." "What's your emergency?" And then it came again. The voice. Softer now, more fragile. "I think he's not just inside anymore." I still remember how I trembled. Not on the outside. Not so anyone could see. but inside. Like a quiet vibration under my skin that wouldn't stop. After that sixth call, I stood up, took off my headset, and walked to the window of the call center. Outside, everything was still. Not a soul on the street. Just the flickering glow of a street lamp reflected in the puddle in front of the building. But I felt watched, not from the outside, from somewhere closer. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not that night. Not the next day. But I pulled the call logs. The audio files automatically saved after each emergency call. I listened to them all, one after the other, and that's when I realized something was wrong. Not just because of the repeated voice, not just because we couldn't identify the caller, but because of the background noise. It was always the same, not identical. This wasn't some reused recording, but the atmosphere was consistent. A mix of distant static and something like a low hum. Electrical maybe, or organic. I couldn't tell, and between the words, barely audible, a rhythm. Footsteps, 3 steps, then silence, 3 more. Pause. Every time. I ran the audio through analysis software. The frequency scan showed irregular spikes. High bands, usually, only found in machinery, or in voices passed through multiple filters. But this wasn't a fake. It wasn't synthetic. It was real, and still impossible. I started digging into the address, Schwanenstieg 14. Old newspaper archives, online, forums, Facebook groups from locals, and then I found something. A small article from 2009, shortly after the last registered owner had died. A man named Peter Lagemann. The article was mundane. Last resident of Schwanenstieg 14 passes away. House to be sold. But the comments. One user wrote anonymously, "There was always a light on, even though no one lived there. And sometimes, at night, you could hear the phone ringing through the windows, but no one was inside. Always the same." Another. "I once looked in the window. There was a note on the sill. It said, 'He can hear through the line.' I froze. Literally, the office heat was on, but it felt like cold air was leaking from my screen." Later, I asked a friend of mine, an old high school buddy who worked as a technician at Telecom, for a favor. Told him I had a weird case. Hypothetical, of course. I asked, "Is it possible for an old landline to make calls even if the power and line are cut?" He laughed, then went quiet. "Well," he said, "not really. Unless... What? Unless it's somehow hooked into another power circuit or someone's tampering directly with the exchange station. Could a person do that?" He hesitated. "Maybe. But why? I mean, if there's no active number, no SIM, no live connection, it would be like someone making a call from nowhere." Exactly, I thought. From nowhere. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't sleep without hearing that sentence echoing in my head. I think he's inside. And then, sometime later, I don't remember exactly when, came the moment that changed everything. I got a private call. My personal phone. Unknown number. I answered. No greeting. No noise. Just the sentence. "I think he's at your place. Now." I dropped the phone. It hit the table hard. I stared at it like it had just bitten me. My heart was racing. I was drenched in sweat. I don't know how long I sat there. I reported it to the department. Gave them the number. They ran a trace. No registration, no source, not even a signal origin. My colleague, Sven, suggested I take some time off. Too many night shifts, too much stress. Maybe he was right. Maybe I just wanted it all to make sense. Somehow, I stayed home. Slept on the couch. Left the lights on. But it didn't help. Because the calls didn't stop. Only now. They didn't come through the office line anymore. They came to me. I started hearing the ringing before it actually happened. That's hard to explain. It wasn't tinnitus, not a psychological echo. It was present. Like my brain knew it was coming. A few seconds before the screen lit up, my name, my number, Everything normal. I already felt it. It's happening again. And every time I answered, the voice said the same thing. I think he's with you now. But the voice wasn't just coming from the phone anymore. I heard it at night, in the kitchen, in the hallway. Once even in the bathroom while I was in the shower. I turned off the water, and it was there again. Not an echo, not imagination. I barely slept. Started drinking coffee at 3 a.m., sitting on the floor of my living room, wrapped in a blanket, clutching my phone like a weapon. I checked the windows, locked the doors, but deep down, I knew. Whatever this was, it didn't come through doors. One night around 4 a.m., it rang again. This time on the landline. I hadn't gotten a real call on that in years. Maybe the occasional telemarketer. Nothing else. I picked up. No one there. Just breathing. And then, in a whisper, "I see what you see." I screamed. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt like something was seeing through me. Not from outside. From inside. I ripped the phone cord out of the wall, kicked the device until it lay in pieces on the floor. But it didn't help. Nothing changed. Nothing. The next day, I went to the house. Yes, that house. Schwanenstieg 14. I don't know what I expected. Answers? Closure? I just needed to understand. I'd gotten a key. Illegally, yes. Didn't matter. I had to see it myself. The garden was overgrown. The front gate hung off one hinge. The house was smaller than I imagined. Gray facade, windows, cloudy with dust. I stepped inside. The hallway was cold, not in temperature, energetically. As if the air had never been disturbed. As if time didn't flow here. And there it was. The phone. Sitting on a small table under a shredded curtain. Black, rotary dial, caked in dust, but connected. Despite no electricity, no phone service, no cables, I stepped closer. And at that exact moment, it rang, I swear, on everything that has ever mattered to me. It rang. Loud, clear. The sound cut through the air like a scream. I picked it up. Silence. Then a soft crackle. And then, my voice. Not live. A recording. I said, "I think he's with you now." I dropped the receiver, stumbled backward into the wall, stared at the phone, quiet again, like a sleeping animal. But something inside me broke loose. Despair, terror, disbelief. I left. Ran. Almost. Once I reached my car, I locked the doors, gasped for breath, and cried. Yes, cried. Not from fear, from helplessness. 2 weeks later, I quit. No report. No explanation. Just, I'm done. I moved. New neighborhood. New number. No landline. New phone. No social media. I didn't want to just leave the house behind. I wanted to escape the feeling it left inside me, but it doesn't let go because sometimes it still rings. Not often, but regularly. Always late at night. I usually ignore it. Just stare at the display. No name. No number. Just a symbol. One time I answered. Only once. It was quiet. So quiet. And then, my voice. But this time, I didn't say he was with me. I said, "Now it's your turn." And the thing is, I don't remember ever saying that. I don't even know where to start. Maybe with the smell. Yes. That smell. The moment I stepped into the hallway, it hit me like a wall. A mix of damp plaster, stale water, and something else. Hard to define. Something metallic, maybe. I've walked into plenty of apartments before, places where mold crawled up the walls or week-old food rotted on a table. But this was different. Deeper. Almost organic. It was a Tuesday evening in March 2021. Dusseldorf, Bilk District. At the time, I'd been with the criminal police for almost 8 years. I wouldn't call myself easily shaken. But this case took something from me. Something I used to take for granted. The belief that things make sense. if you just look closely enough. But what we found there, or rather, what we didn't find, still haunts me. The emergency calls started 2 days earlier. Anonymous, all from the same street, all reporting the same thing. There's screaming from the 3rd floor, someone's yelling for help. 3 calls the first night, 2 more the next morning. We sent a patrol. Nothing. The officers knocked, listened. No noise, no lights, no signs of movement. They reported back. Probably a prank, or someone watching TV too loud. But then came the 6th call. This time, not anonymous. A woman, maybe in her mid-50s, panic in her voice. She lived directly below the apartment in question. This time, she said, the screaming was clear. A man shouting over and over, "Let me out!" And then, a long, unnatural whimper that cut off mid-breath. I remember her saying, "It sounded like someone was being torn apart." I know it sounds crazy, but it was wrong. We responded immediately. I was with my partner Nadine, 3rd floor, apartment 3B. The door was locked, no signs of forced entry, but the key was still in the lock from the inside. That detail struck me right away. Nadine suggested questioning the neighbors while I spoke to the building manager. An older man, Mr. Baumgartner. Very proper. Very German. When I asked about the tenant, he frowned. 3B, that place is empty, he said. Has been for months. The last renter moved out in October. Nobody's taken it since. I showed him the door. No damage. Key in the lock. Just closed, as if someone had just shut it. Baumgartner looked confused, but not alarmed. Maybe someone had broken in, was squatting there. I asked if he had a spare key. He didn't, so we had no choice. We broke the door. I remember the sound perfectly, the crack of the frame, the metallic scream of the lock giving way. And then, silence. The apartment was empty. No signs of violence, no mess. Everything was in order. Too in order. In the living room, a black leather couch, coffee table completely bare except for an old TV guide. The television itself was on. No picture, just a blank blue screen. No sound, no channel. Just that cold, ghostly glow washing the room in icy light. In the bathroom, the shower was running. Warm water hitting the tiles. Steam on the mirror. But no one there. No towel, no clothes, no toothbrush, nothing personal. Just that shower, running long enough that the water had turned lukewarm. We searched every room, every corner. No one. No trace of a resident. No name on the mailbox. No mail. No utility accounts. No rental file with the building management. It was as if no one had ever lived there. But that wasn't the most unsettling part. In the kitchen, I found something strange. A calendar hanging on the wall turned to October. The month the last tenant supposedly moved out. One single date was circled, October 15th, and next to it, written in pen. Last day? I don't know why that hit me so hard. Maybe because it was so casual, so final. By then, Nadine was at the window, smoking. I stepped beside her, and we looked down at the street together. Probably a junkie, she said. Broke in, hiding. Out, slips out over the roof when someone shows up. I nodded. But something in me knew that wasn't it. No sleeping bag, no mattress, no trash, no signs of anyone living there. The apartment was sterile, almost like it had been prepared, and then a thought came to me. I don't know where from. Like someone dropped it into my head. What if no one came in? What if something left? I shook it off, but it never really left me. And even now, it hasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about the apartment. I know how that sounds, like I was buying into some ghost story. But there was something that had buried itself deep beneath the surface of my thoughts, like a splinter, barely visible, but with every movement, painfully present. The next morning, I went into the precinct, grabbed my coffee, pretended it was just another case. But every time my eyes landed on the report, no persons found. No indication of occupancy. No suspicious traces. My stomach clenched. I couldn't explain it. And even more, I couldn't ignore it. I called Nadine and asked if she'd come back to the apartment with me. She laughed. "Don't drive yourself crazy, Felix. Probably just some homeless guy sneaking in through a basement window." But then, after a pause, "Okay, if it helps you. Tonight?" We drove over around 8:30. It was already dark. The streets in Bilk were slick with light rain. I remember how the street lamps reflected off the asphalt, like something out of an old noir film. When we entered the building, everything felt the same as before. Too quiet, unnaturally still. This time, I asked the building manager for the basement keys. Maybe we'd missed something. Nadine checked the upper floors while I headed down. The basement was cold, damp, the walls streaked with salt stains. It smelled like rotting wood and rust. I walked the narrow hall with my flashlight. Most doors were locked, some hung slightly. Open, old furniture, bikes, cardboard boxes, nothing unusual. Then I reached a door with no label. Bare wood, paint peeling. I pressed the handle. It opened. The room was empty, except for an old chair in the center, and a folded blanket, and a small radio on the floor. Battery powered. It was off, but I swear. When I stepped into the room, I heard a whisper, just for a second. Very faint, like someone exhaled words, right next to my ear. I spun around. Nothing. Just my own footsteps, and water dripping from somewhere deeper in the dark. I left that basement faster than I'd ever admit. Upstairs, Nadine was waiting. She hadn't found anything. No new signs. No movement. But she looked at me and frowned. "You okay? You're all white as a sheet." I told her about the basement. The whisper. She shook her head. "Maybe you're just too far in, Felix. Happens to all of us eventually." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overtired, overworked. But then came the moment. Everything tipped. We went back into the apartment one more time. The door frame had been patched up, but the place felt different. Colder. The TV was on again, even though we'd shut it off the last time. No picture. Just that same flickering blue screen, and the sound. This time, there was sound. A low, pulsing hiss, like static, but alive. It wasn't just noise, it had rhythm, breath, like the apartment was listening. I stepped closer to the TV. My reflection shimmered in the glass, but it wasn't in sync, a fraction of a second behind. Just enough to notice, like my reflection had a mind of its own. Then the sound cut out. Total silence, and in that silence, I heard footsteps. Not in the apartment, below us, directly beneath our feet. But there was nothing down there. Nothing but the empty basement room. I looked at Nadine. "You heard that, right?" She nodded slowly, didn't say a word. And then, almost in unison, we heard water, the shower, again, just like last time. We went to the bathroom. The mirror fogged over, water running. Nadine pulled the curtain aside. Nothing, no one, no shadow, just water cascading, over the tiles. I don't know why I did it, but I stepped in. Into the shower. The water was ice cold. And in that moment, I saw something in the mirror. For a split second. Not my face. Something else. Dark. Twisted. And then, gone. I stumbled back, shaking. Nadine looked at me, then at the mirror. "Felix, there was someone there," she whispered. We left the apartment. Fast. No more words. I remember standing on the sidewalk, both of us soaked from the rain. She looked at me and said, "I'm never going back in there." I nodded, agreed, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Something was in that place. Something that didn't want to be understood. Or maybe, something that had been waiting to finally be noticed. 2 weeks passed. I tried to move on, focus on other cases, get some distance. But everything I saw, heard, or smelled pulled me right back to that apartment. The blue light, the static. That moment in the shower. When my reflection, no, that thing in the mirror looked at me. I stopped talking to Nadine about it. We both avoided the topic, but every time we passed each other in the hallway, there was that glance, that unspoken, "You saw it too, didn't you?" I wasn't sleeping much, and when I did, the nights were filled with sounds that shouldn't be there. Footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Whispers from the walls. Once, I heard a TV hissing, even though mine was off. I walked over, touched the screen, cold, but my handprint stayed on the glass for minutes, like it was fogged, from the inside. I started digging into the previous tenant. I thought maybe the answer was there. A name, a face, anything to fill the hole that had opened in my head. But there was nothing. The property manager had no file, no lease, no deposit. The name the superintendent gave me, Rasmus Heller, wasn't in any database. No residency record, no tax ID, no citizen ID. It was like he had never existed, or like he had been erased. I kept searching. Asked around the building, delivery drivers, mailmen. One of them, a tired-looking guy with a mustache, remembered something. Yeah, there was someone. Never said much. Always went out at night, hoodie up, like a ghost. I asked him if he knew where he went. He shook his head, but then he said something that made my stomach turn. One time I saw him leave, but there was still someone inside. I swear it. I saw someone at the window. But he lived alone, didn't he? I couldn't answer, because I didn't know. No one did. 3 Fridays after the first call, I got a phone call from Nadine. It was 2 a.m. "Felix, I think someone was in my apartment." I was fully awake in an instant. Drove straight to her place. Her apartment was in Derendorf. Small, neat, exactly what you'd expect from a cop. Everything in its place. But this time, it wasn't quiet. The TV was on. Old model, no smart features. And yet, same image as in apartment 3B blue screen. No channel, no sound. Just that glowing, ghostly hue. Nadine sat curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, trembling. I was in the bathroom. When I came out, the TV was on. I hadn't even plugged it in. I stepped closer, stared at the screen, and again, I saw it. A flicker, like something was behind my reflection, watching, waiting. I turned the TV off, but the screen stayed faintly lit, just for a moment. We didn't talk much that night. I stayed with her, sitting in the chair, hand on my gun, like that would help. Help against what? I didn't know. By morning, the TV was black. No glow, no signal. We didn't mention it, but we both knew. Something had moved. Left the apartment or followed us. I needed answers, clarity. So I went back. Yeah, I know. Stupid. Reckless. But necessary. I returned to apartment 3B. Alone. It was early evening. The sky was gray, drizzling. I stepped inside. Everything was just as we'd left it, even the TV, off. No noise, no water, no movement. I walked through the rooms, slowly, searching, asking, silently, like a prayer. What are you? Why here? And then, in the bathroom, a sound, a click, metallic, behind me. I turned, the front door, closed. I stepped back into the hallway, checked. It was true, the door was shut, and the key, inside the lock, from the inside, just like the first time. Rushed over, tried the handle, locked. I was trapped, and then the TV came on, by itself, flickering, hissing. But this time, not blue. There was an image, me, my face. But not now, not here, older, pale, eyes sunken. I was speaking, but there was no sound then. I looked up, straight at the camera, at me. A scream, directly behind me. Loud, I spun around. Nothing. Water. The shower. It was running again. I wasn't alone. I won't tell you what I saw, not because I don't want to, but because my mind can't hold it. It wasn't human. And yet, it was me. Or something that knew me. Too well. too deeply. I remember only one last thing: the door unlocking, swinging open. I ran. I fled. Burst into the street. I think I screamed, maybe cried, maybe both. I never went back, but I still see it, in every screen, in every mirror. And sometimes, I feel it behind me, when the night is quiet and I'm alone. A breath, a presence, something that's there, but shouldn't be. Was it a man? A ghost? A fracture in reality? I don't know. Maybe I never will. But I know one thing. That apartment was never empty. It was waiting. I was never the type for ghost stories. Not as a kid, not as a teenager, and especially not as a cop. I believed in facts, in tangible things, in what could be proven, touched, or at least logically explained. Everything else was imagination, fatigue, stress, fantasy, until that night in November 2020. I was on the night shift, like so many times before. The streets of Berlin were deserted, the way only a pandemic could make them. A strange stillness hung over the city, not just silence, but atmosphere, like a heavy, translucent veil draped over everything. The few people out and about moved, quickly, heads down, as if trying to get out of the night's line of sight as fast as possible. I was patrolling alone in a squad car, as usual. My route took me through Steglitz, down Schlossstrasse, then over to Albrechtstrasse. I knew the area well, lots of empty storefronts, concrete shadows. Sometime after 2 a.m., I spotted the car, an old green Audi, parked crookedly on a small roadside rest strip. The hood vibrated slightly. The engine was running. Lights off. No driver visible. Or was there? I slowed down and pulled up beside the car. And that's when I saw him. A man, in the driver's seat, hunched forward like he was asleep. Hands resting in his lap, face half in shadow. I parked behind him, didn't turn on the blue lights. I didn't want to scare him. I figured he was drunk. Or just someone resting. It happens. A lot. I got out, walked up to the driver's side. The windows were fogged up, typical for this time of year. I tapped gently on the glass. He jolted upright, not just startled, panicked. He screamed like I'd yanked him out of a nightmare. His eyes were wide, pupils constricted, his breathing sharp and shallow. I raised both hands immediately and spoke, calmly. "It's okay. Police, you looked like you were asleep." He stared at me, like he had to process that I was real. Then he glanced behind him, at the rearview mirror, and then back at me. Did you see it?" he whispered. His voice trembled. "The face." I frowned. "What face?" "In the mirror. It looked right at me. It was behind me." He turned around. No one on the back seat. I was alone. But it was there. Just for a second, I swear. I took a deep breath. In moments like that, I try to stay rational. Maybe it was a shadow, a reflection. Maybe he was hallucinating, from sleep deprivation or meds. I asked him to step out, got his name, asked about his condition. No signs of alcohol, no drugs. Clear mind, as far as I could tell. Just deeply shaken. I radioed in the incident and ran his info. His name was Henrik Voss, 42 years old. No criminal record, no known mental health issues. He seemed totally normal, until I asked him to show me what he saw. He got back into the driver's seat and pointed at the rear view. Mirror. Here. It was right here. A face, pale, dark, the eyes, empty. It looked straight at me, and then it was gone. I stood outside, looked into the mirror myself. My own face, slightly warped by the angle. Nothing unusual, no movement. But then I remembered my body cam. It had been on the entire time, protocol during any stop outside the vehicle. I made a mental note to review the footage later, just to be sure. We didn't let Henrik drive home. He was too shaken, his hands still trembling, and it was clear he didn't want to get back in the car. A colleague came and drove him home. I returned to the station, wrote up the report, and saved the body cam footage to the server without watching it. It was late. I was tired. And honestly, I didn't want to think about that look Henrik gave me when he whispered. It wasn't the first time. He had said it casually, almost like an afterthought, but it stuck. The next evening, alone in the surveillance room, I reviewed the footage. Everything was there. My arrival, the knock, Henrik's panic, his words. And then, at minute 7, second 38, it happened. In the rearview mirror. A shadow. Not just a smudge, not a reflection. A face. Faint but unmistakable. Eyes, nose, mouth. For exactly 2 seconds. Then, gone. I paused the video. Rewound. Played it again. Always the same. The face. Clear as day. But there was no one else in the car. I wasn't alone. I don't know how long I sat there. The screen was frozen on that one frame. The face in the rearview mirror. Somewhere between reflection and darkness. It was blurry, yes, but unmistakably human. Or what was left of human. The features were distorted, like the image had been dragged through water. The eyes? Black. Not hollow. Deep. Like you could fall into them. The skin looked grayish, almost green, and there was a kind of flickering, like the image itself was resisting clarity. I rewound, again and again. Second 37, then 38. And then, just for a moment, it twitched. The face moved. Not much, just a small shift in angle, as if it noticed me through the camera. And then, gone. I shut everything down, turned the lights on, left the room. My hands were trembling. I know how it sounds. Like the start of a breakdown. But I'm not new to this. I've seen corpses, violence, accidents. I've spoken to people who smiled while describing how they killed their families. But this was different. It was subtle. And somehow, that made it more real. I decided to contact Henrik Voss. I still had his address in the report. Part of me knew I shouldn't. I wasn't required to follow up. The case was technically closed. But I had to know. Had he seen it before? Had it come back? The next day, I drove, off-duty plainclothes, to his apartment in Schöneberg. Simple concrete building, 3rd floor. I rang. No answer. Again, nothing. Then the neighbor across the hall stepped out. An older man in slippers. Looking for Mr. Voss? I nodded. Is he home? Not since 2 days ago. Cops came by too. Someone picked him up? Or he ran off? I don't know. I thanked him and left. Back at the station, no missing person report, no alerts. I called Henrik's phone. Disconnected. No ring, no voicemail, just dead. That night I had the first dream. I was driving, just like on patrol, down empty streets. Total silence. No radio, no chatter. Just the hum of the engine. Then I saw it. The car. The old Audi. Same place. Same angle. I stopped. Got out. Walked up to the window and saw myself in the rearview mirror. Only, it wasn't me. It wore my face. But it wasn't me. I woke up drenched in sweat. 3:17 a.m. I went back to my shifts. Everything routine. Everything normal. But it didn't feel normal. I started seeing things. Not directly. Just at the edge of my vision. Movement in my cruisers. Rear view. Shadows on walls that didn't match any light source. I told myself it was just exhaustion. But then, one night, I stopped at a red light. And there it was again. In the back seat. Just for a second. I turned around. Empty. But the smell, that was new, metallic, like iron, like blood. I didn't report it. What would I even say? That I was being followed by a shadow? That I saw a face that wasn't there? I'd lose more than just credibility. So I did what I do best. Observe, record, collect. I reviewed the body cam footage again. And this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Right as the face appeared, very faintly, there was a sound. Not loud, barely audible. A voice, whispering, distorted. I looped it, boosted the frequency, filtered the static. And then I understood. One word. Just one. Back. I don't know what it means. Back where? Or what's coming back? A week later, a colleague from Friedrichshain reached out. He'd had a similar case. Driver stopped on the roadside in the middle of the night, panicked. Talked about a face in the rearview mirror. Same description. Same fear. I showed him my video. He showed me his both times. The face. Not identical, but similar. Like it was adapting or growing. I started to suspect something. Not something logical, not something I could prove. But it was real. It wasn't tied to the car or to Henrik. It was tied to the moment. The act of seeing, the awareness that something was there when nothing should be. And once you see it, it never lets you go. I started avoiding mirrors, not just in the car, at home too, in the bathroom, in the hallway. I took down the one above the sink, turned the one in my bedroom to face the wall. At the station, I avoided glancing at the locker mirror when grabbing my uniform. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was instinct. Like my body knew something was waiting there. Because every time I did look, even just a fleeting glance, I thought I saw something. Not clearly, always just the hint of a presence. Like a veil being pushed from the other side. Not a face anymore. More like an imprint. An attempt to take shape. And every single time the same thought entered my mind. It's learning. I started going through old cases, looking for similar reports. Traffic stops with irrational behavior, hit and runs without explanation, mentions of something in the mirror, and slowly, a pattern emerged. Not geographical, not chronological, but emotional. Every person involved described the feeling of being watched, paranoia, pressure, and, eventually, they disappeared from the records, transferred, dismissed, missing, or just silenced. One of them, a former officer from the South, had written in an internal memo, "It's not the mirror. It's the moment you doubt you're alone." I stopped sleeping. I stayed up all night, pacing my apartment, counting steps. I heard things. Furniture creaking, outlets buzzing, the ticking of the clock. Everything sounded louder, more meaningful, and then, eventually, the phone started ringing again. My personal phone. Same time every night. 3:17 a.m. I never answered, but the caller ID didn't show a number. Just mirror. I know how that sounds. I know what most people would think. Delusion, sleep deprivation, paranoia. But I didn't feel crazy. I felt watched. On the 7th night, I decided to pick up. I sat on my living room floor, lights off, phone glowing in the dark. It buzzed. Again, 3:17 a.m. I hesitated, then tapped answer. Silence. No voice. Just my own breathing. And then, someone else's. Deeper. Closer. "You see me now, don't you?" The voice wasn't fully human. It sounded like metal, dust, and memory. Couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, throat clenched. Then came the whisper. "I'm already inside." The light flickered. The screen went black. The phone crashed, and in the reflection of my TV, powered off, I saw something move. I don't remember what happened. After that, I think I passed out. When I came to, it was daylight. I was on the floor. My neck ached. The phone was dead. No call logged. No message. Nothing. But in the hallway mirror, the one I forgot to remove, there was a mark. Not fingerprints. Not a face. Something in between. Like a shadow burned into the glass. I left my apartment. Just walked out. No bag. No keys. I wandered the streets, breathing in the cold Berlin air like it could cleanse me. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't in that apartment anymore. It was in me. I requested a transfer. Desk duty, paperwork, no more patrols, no more rear-view mirrors. But it's not enough, because sometimes when I lean over to pull a file from the cabinet, I see something in the dark. Screen of my turned off monitor, a face, a whisper, an echo, or maybe just my own reflection. Distorted, tired, changed. I don't know what I saw. Maybe it was a projection, a manifestation of fear, loneliness, guilt. Maybe it can be explained neurologically, psychologically. But what if it can't? What if we're all just one glance away from seeing it? What if it only reveals itself when you're truly alone? And when you start to doubt? Because once you see it, it sees you back, and it stays.